take on a lot of people who are self-employed or possibly people on the lump as well. So everybody's passing the buck to someone else, and at the bottom of the level, the people that actually do the work, they just see themselves as individuals just earning a living. They don't see themselves as having a common interest.
Factory Inspector Sandra Caldwell monitors sites in London, trying to ensure that employers comply with the Health and Safety at Work Act. But with just a dozen inspectors for construction in London, only a fraction of the 100,000 plus sites are ever visited.
The number of sites have increased, and also you've been getting greater fragmentation of the industry, in that large and medium companies now only employ directly a very few people. They rely on the flexibility of using subcontractors for most of their sites.
So what does that mean then in terms of safety?
It has a knock-on effect that I think it's obvious that if you employ somebody directly, you've got a considerable amount of control over their activities.
Right, can we go and step across the road, because I want the point.
If you are a main contractor or a managing agent and you're employing a lot of subcontractors, you then have this difficulty of control.
How many of you working, Mr. Wayman?
There's 9 of us on site at the moment.
9? And what, conversion into flats?
No, just one house.
Just one house?
Yeah.
What about all the men inside? Are they subbies or do they work?
They're all subbies.
They're all subbies?
Yeah, they're all subbies.
But you've got overall control of the site, have you? Okay. I must admit, I'm intrigued and concerned. Can you tell me why the 2 standards have been sawn off?
At this site, the uprights or standards on the right-hand side of the scaffold have been cut off, allowing access to the basement area, but thereby leaving the structure unsafe.
If you actually look at it, if you stand by the car, if we don't get knocked over, can you actually see it starting to bend?
Yeah. I mean, I know I was on it myself just now, but I won't let anybody else go on it. After they'd done that, the governor came down and I said to him, I'm not happy with it. You know, it's unsafe. He said, oh, that's the safest houses.
But
I don't particularly like it.
You don't like it, do you?
No.
What does it feel like to work on? Does it feel as if it's...
Horrible.
Horrible?
It does. You know, I mean, when I was up there just now...
Work can restart. They are the inspector's main weapon in the war against unsafe practices.
The cause of accidents are the same. They are very basic causes. They are falls. Falls from scaffolding, falls from roofs. There are people hit by falling materials. For example, people being trapped in trenches. There are people being knocked down by site transport. People being electrocuted. So the basic causes haven't changed over the years.
Materials hauled up on a hoist should be secured by a safety hook. At the next site, Sandra found half-hundredweight buckets of molten asphalt attached by a piece of bent wire.
Can I just ask you something, please? Factory Inspector, doesn't your company provide you with proper hooks?
We've never had no complaints with it.
You never had no complaints? But this is what your company provide you, or you provide it yourself?
No, because we lost our one, so I just make them up.
You lost your one? Yeah. I suggest you go back to your company and get a proper safety hook, or if you're going to re-rig your ginny wheel...
Oh, we're finishing today anyway, so...
You're finishing today. So, okay, you're just going to carry the rest through.
Yeah, just go upstairs.
The thing is, can I explain why? These just won't support. They do give away, right? And we've had a couple people covered in hot asphalt, okay? Often it's not yourselves, it's somebody who's passing by, okay? For future use, you do need a proper ladder access, yeah? And can we infill here? I'd like this dismantled because, I mean, it isn't rigged up properly. What's going to happen here is if you suddenly put a shock loading on the end there, the whole thing is likely to go, right? Which means the whole lot can fall into the street, and that can sort of hit a passer-by. Many people just have, because of past experience, almost custom and practice, have grown accustomed to the risks and often don't actually recognise a potential hazard. There are others who are wanting to make money and decide that they're willing to take the risk. And there are others that are working and, in a sense, may be concerned that they want to have a job and are therefore willing to put up with substandard conditions.
Say you go on a job, right, and it's completely unsafe, and you say, well, hold on a minute, mate, I'm not prepared to work there. That's really unsafe. They're going, all right, mate, well, the exit's over there, you can probably find your own way, you know what I mean? So you're down the road anyway, so then where are you?
I mean, I've been asked to do scaffolding on jobs. I mean, I know how to tie up a fitting, and I know roughly what scaffold looks like. But I mean, if I'd have refused to do it, I would have been out of a job. It's the first thing I was asked to do when I got on the job.
If you actually asked the bloke, say you asked the foreman who told you to do it, look, I've never done it before, could you tell me how to do it? He might be all right. He might say, yeah, all right, mate, it's, do it like this. Or he might say, well, get someone else to do it. Or he might show you. But there's always the fear that, if you don't say, oh, yes, sir, right away, sir, I'll run off and do that, then you're down the road again. It's always in the back of your mind.
With little chance of work at home in Ireland, 23-year-old Tomas Fahy came to London in January. He was earning £25 a day working for a subcontractor on a development in the city when he practically lost his hand in a serious accident. He's had 7 operations and will be permanently disabled.
I actually caught it in a concrete pump. It's a machine for pumping concrete. And actually there's a pneumatic ram inside the trough at the back of the concrete pump that I was cleaning out a bit of rubble, and the guy turned the machine on and it goes through its motion, and it caught my hand and tore it off to about 70%.
Cut it through at the wrist there?
Cut it through at just about at the wrist and down. Well, actually from this side down, and it was hanging on about there. It's the only part of my hand. It's about 70%.
What were you doing with your hand inside a concrete pump?
Well, the thing is that inside, you've got to imagine that inside the concrete pump there's 2 cylinders. One for feeding the concrete back up into the machine. Then it's shot back out when the pressure is built up. You've got to keep the cylinders free at all times of any dirt or any clogging or anything. So there's a small bit of dirt in it. So I just reached my hand up underneath the actual machine through a trough, and the guy came along and turned the machine on. I'm not qualified to do any of this stuff. Like, it's a big machine, it's complicated enough. But a guy came along and he showed me for a half an hour just the workings of the machine, and that was it. You were the expert on the site then. That was it.
What, so half an hour's conversation about it?
Half an hour's actual conversation about it, and that was it. You were the man then.
You see blokes doing things which there's no way they should be allowed to do, but no one pulls them up for it. You have to use machinery in all different trades and that, which isn't safe, either to yourself or to other people nearby. And, I mean, that's crazy.
So you're saying you don't have any responsibilities as workers?
No, I'm not saying that. I mean, I'm not given an opportunity to have responsibility.
How far can you carry that responsibility? I mean, you're up against a wall all the time, as far as safety is concerned. I mean, you moan or you complain or you look for goggles or you ask someone else to change the blade in the tool or whatever. They don't. Trouble, he's not worth it. Get rid of him. It's the answer. Get rid of him, because the labour is there to replace you, particularly now.
The current construction boom has produced a severe shortage of skilled workers. Estimates put it as high as 250,000 a year due to cutbacks in training and skilled men leaving the industry during the recession of the early 80s. So others are being drawn in to fill the gaps in a potentially hazardous industry where risk-taking is accepted as just part of the job. It's this, together with less direct control of the workforce and increased commercial pressures, that the Health and Safety Executive argues has produced the rise in the rate of serious and fatal injuries. The HSE concluded that management action could have saved 70% of the 739 people killed between 1981 and 1985.
Right. What I would suggest you need is, can you put another angled tube down along the gangway?
Yes.
Because as you get to this level, you're missing...
You're missing.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. And the other thing is we're beginning to get some quite severely cracked walls.
Right.
Have you got a scaffolder permanently on
We've
site?
got a scaffolder.
So you can get him to pull some of these out as well.
That's correct.
Right. This looks a little bit of an interesting configuration. Oh, can you pull him down so he can stay and work there but not work over that gap?
John. John. Yeah.
I know you've got to keep that up flowing,
Yes.
but can you work from here, not standing over that gap, okay? Because it's quite a long way to go.
Where would you say the accidents are happening? On the big sites or on the small sites?
They are spread across the board. If you look at fatal accidents, 50% of fatal accidents occur with small companies, small employers, employing less than 14. But equally, that means you could say that 50% are spread across medium and large companies. So it's not confined to one particular sector, it is spread across the board.
Robert Sharp was an unemployed joiner in Durham, drawn south by the boom. He fractured his skull and badly injured his legs in a fall and may never work again.
He can't walk very far at all. He gets upset because he can't go out to football matches. He can go and watch, but he can't participate in the games. He can't do what he used to do even with the children.
I would say I was really fit. Played football all my life. My football craze finished now, I would say, like. I used to do a lot of running and all sorts. I was really fit, like five-a-side, badminton, anything like that.
Robert was working for a subcontractor in this city office block. He stepped onto plasterboard covering an unguarded hole and fell 20 feet onto concrete.
They told us it could take up to 2 to 3 years for all my body to settle back. All the nerves has been damaged and paralysed in the arm. Face is still paralysed, so I've lost my hearing. I don't think they would let us go on a big site, only one hearing. So I'm deaf for that side.
If it turns out that you're not going to be fit enough to work again, what will that mean for you in the long term?
I don't know really, I couldn't tell you that. I don't know what life's got in front of me, I haven't got a clue. It all depends what they do to these knees. Could make us a cripple. I could even get arthritis. I've been told arthritis could set in and make us a cripple.
I never thought this would happen to Ruth, never. I didn't want him to go in the first place, but there was no work in the northeast, so, you know, you more or less you follow the money.
Last summer, a 37-year-old office worker was killed on his first day on this site. He hadn't told his family that he'd lost his job in marine insurance a year before, so the news that John Tatham had been labouring came as a shock to his brother.
I was absolutely amazed. I could have actually turned around and said to you that there was no way that my brother was on a building site. And he weighed about 8 stone. He was about same height as me, about 5'8". He weighed about 8 stone, and he was lily white. There's only one way to describe him. He was totally lily white, thin hands, and so no, I would say there was no way he could do it. He couldn't. I mean, he wasn't physically built for working on a building site. I don't think he should have been allowed up the level. And they shouldn't have allowed him up a level anyway if they'd have asked the right questions, because my brother was epileptic. So, you know, what chance? What chance has he got?
John Tatham was working on the second floor, wheeling a barrow up a ramp between 2 levels. He stepped backwards, but safety barriers on the edge of the building were missing. There was nothing to break his fall to the ground 23 feet below.
I would put it down to companies applying pressure. The job's got to be done, keeping the prices down, cut corners. I think they just do it. I think it may be just it's because it's so competitive. It is a competitive industry. So if they want the work, they've got to go in at the right prices. And I think that's what happens. I think that's what actually happened there.
people think we're all paid a lot of money, but I mean, you work a long day on the buildings, you work in bad conditions. I mean, the real danger to your life is real. No one ever thinks it's going to happen to them. And I bet the 152 blokes who died last year didn't think it was going to happen to them either. It's not something we're imagining or making up to try and score some points off someone like that. That is the reality. That's the way it is.
Can I have a... They really should have this, some timbering, the height they've got to here. Can we actually have them out until you get this sorted out?
Chaps, hang on a sec. Can you come up a minute?
One or two?
Murphy's, yeah?
Yes. You see they started doing it.
Yeah. No, I mean, with that overhang. Can we ask to see their foreman?
Yes, or I can take the instructions and pass them on if you wish.
I want to know why he's allowed it to get into this condition.
Okay. Is he? Oh.
Right, you're Mr. Gallagher, are you?
Yes.
You're a representative from Murphy's?
J. Murphy's, yes.
Can you explain to me why I find some of you men working down this manhole then?
Sorry?
Can you explain why I found two of your men working down this manhole?
Well, we've shored it up to that point there and we just excavated it out, concrete and put the rings in. Well, if you notice around here, this whole area is tiled, right?
Yeah.
If you notice 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Yeah.
There's no way that the earth can give in around here.
You're standing on one here.
I know that.
We'll be shoring up against piles.
This area isn't piled. That's loose fill. That's not going to stand. It needs to be pulled back or timbered there. And again, the two corners there.
Sorry?
The two corners there.
Yeah, of course, being clay, it's pretty solid anyway.
Yes, but it will go,
Yeah.
especially with the weather we're having at the moment. Now, whatever work you're going to do to stabilise this, it needs to be done for the top. The men can't go in and do it in there, all right?
George, that's the reason.
Out! What the...
That's the problem.
Where does that gentleman work for Murphy's?
He does indeed.
Is he a full-time employee?
He is.
I refused to go into a 16-foot hole by 2.5 feet wide because it wasn't safe. There was dirt piling in every night and we had to dig it out in the morning. So I refused to go into it and he showed me the main road and I took it.
But isn't that part of the problem? You took the road and left, as you say, but there's someone else behind you prepared to get into that trench.
There's 5 more there with me prepared to get into that trench.
And how do you overcome that? They must know it's dangerous, and yet why are they still prepared to carry on working in it?
Well, they're being paid cash in the hand for one thing. I think it was £30 a day. And just so much labour about it. You'd be replaced the next day, no problem.
Can you stop that for the moment while I'm sorry about this, but I mean, that's ridiculous. Can you just get the men this end? Come out, please. Can you call your mate as well? Before you disappear, could I just have a brief word with you, please? Factory inspector. Can I have your names, please? I just would like your name for the moment. A factory inspector wants to know. Yes, please.
Given there are so few of you trying to monitor all the sites that say in a place like London, and if you've got managements who are perhaps not being as diligent as they might be with regards to the Health and Safety Work Act, I mean, you may as well give up, mayn't you?
No, I agree our job is a difficult task. But I think you have to remember the duty is with the industry itself.
That is fairly and squarely laid on their shoulders by law. It's not our duty to take those responsibilities from them. Our task is to monitor and enforce.
But meanwhile, as soon as Sandra's back was turned, her previous instructions had been ignored.
Excuse me, could you two gentlemen come out, please? Will you come out? Where have they got to? Can I have your names, please?
Every mad dry and all the
Right, you're Mr.
O'Brien.
And you're Mr.
Can't see.
Why have you just gone down back in there?
Why, what's the problem?
You don't know there's a problem yourself. You can't see anything wrong in that excavation at all.
Nothing, do you know?
Not particularly.
What is it because we got timbered up or something?
These two gentlemen were back down there.
Pardon?
These two gentlemen were back down in the excavation.
Oh, I see. Well, no. No, we've got to conform with the regulations, and that's all. I know in your experience you're very happy to do it, and you know even the sound of the soil as to what's going to happen. But I'm afraid these days it doesn't work that way.
You're working in a manhole here. I don't get too near to the edge. I know it's piled in certain areas, but the material between the piles just could come down on you at any moment.
How are they viewed, the inspectors, from your point of view, from the sites and the workers' point of view?
I don't think most people ever see them. I mean, I don't know how many there are, but I mean, there can't be many because you probably really see them. And I have been on jobs where the health and safety shut them down for unsafe working practices, and I don't know, like whatever the problem is, they might pay some attention to it, but things look pretty much the same the next day when you're back working there.
Things looked pretty much the same when we returned to this site in Docklands. We found men working on an unprotected walkway, despite the fact that a prohibition notice issued only 2 hours earlier banned work in this area until scaffold edge protection had been put up.
You must recognise that our visits are snapshots in time, so we will visit a site if the circumstances are such that we consider there is a serious risk. We'll issue a prohibition notice. We will monitor that prohibition notice, but again, you have to recognise that we're only going at one period of time. We may visit and find everything is all right. That is not to say that prior to our visit or after our visit, the notice isn't being complied with.
Factory inspectors can prosecute construction companies for breaking the law, but they face the dilemma that the work involved in preparing prosecutions inevitably means fewer site inspections. Most cases are dealt with in the magistrates' court, where the average fine last year was £450. Crown Court prosecutions take up yet more of an inspector's time, and even there, average fines are only around £2,000. And although the possibility exists, no one has ever been imprisoned for a breach of the Health and Safety at Work Act in the construction industry. John Tatham's employers pleaded guilty in the magistrates' court and were fined £250.
I'm disgusted, absolutely disgusted, that a man's life can be worth. Anybody else, it won't deter companies. Much money as you could screw them for, because quite honestly they don't deserve to have people working for them. And I think the courts are just as bad because in fact what have they done? They're not going to deter the guys to do it. They've got fined a week's wages.
I don't think you'd have the same number of accidents in any other industry because people aren't employed in the same way. And it shows because there's no job security and there's no organisation. It results in the things we've been talking about.
if you ever see anybody else hurt, like, you know, you see, oh, jeez, like, I wouldn't like that to happen to me, you know. If I got a job that would pay my rent and leave me a few pounds to go out and buy myself clothes, I would take it. But otherwise, I would just keep on the way I'm going. I wish there was a bit more safety, like, on the sites, you know. But there's nothing I can do about it. Like.